Hello everyone, welcome back to Inside the Ropes. Yet again, it's one of these things where I will give an introduction, but the person needs no introduction. For a start, you can see them, and secondly, I could just say legend. Currently plying their trade in AEW, but the thing we're here to discuss, we're going to go through their WWE career and talk a little bit about a few things that have come up in the past few months in wrestling as well. It is the man behind the Arn Show on ad-free shows. It's Arn Anderson. How's it going today, Arn?
Very good, my friend. Very good. Yourself?
I am not too bad. I know it's a lot earlier for you than it is for me, so I'm not going to complain at all. But yeah, I think the first thing we should really get into, there's only one place that we can start on, a week like this week. We've just seen the Undertaker essentially retire. If we take it at face value, he's retired. One of my favourite things I seen last week, there was a lot of Undertaker stuff flying about. He was doing a lot of, interviews, a lot of media. He named his favourite technical wrestler that he's ever seen. And he named a certain Arn Anderson as the best technical wrestler he's ever seen. What were your reaction to those comments?
Well, it floored me, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of factors there. Number one, I don't work for the company that he's a lifetime employee of.
Yeah.
That was the one shocker. The fact that my name came out of his mouth, I can't tell you how honored and privileged I felt and just shocked. I mean, of all the names, the Kurt Angles, the Shawn Michaels, all the guys, that have been in that company who are just tremendous performers, himself. He could have said himself and no one would have called him a liar. But it was one of those things that I was really honored with, and coming from a guy like that who's so respected in the industry, which I'm sure you know, and he has set a precedent as far as work rate and all those positive things, giving the fans what they want, making sure that if he's there, whether he's hurt or sick or whatever the case is, he's going to go out and give you a tremendous performance. And he's never failed to do that. He is so respected in that locker room. It just, for him to share that on really his week, because it blew up pretty good for me. I don't get all that much play on the internet, and or what I don't think is a whole lot. Maybe it is. But for him to say that is something I'll take to my grave. Really meant a lot to me.
It's great because it's the kind of thing that people might not have expected your name to come out his mouth, but when it did, no one was arguing. It's the kind of thing that no one could say, no, that's definitely wrong. Arn Anderson isn't the greatest technical wrestler ever, so that's testament to you, because who's going to argue with The Undertaker? And no one has any reason to. But yeah, of course, there's a couple other little points we want to hit on The Undertaker before we move on to Arn Anderson. Like we said, he's just celebrated 30 years in the industry. He's named you as the greatest technical wrestler. Obviously, you were around for quite a big part of his career, not the latter stages, but quite a big part of his career. What might people not know? I know we've seen a lot more of Mark Callaway than we have in this past week. What might we not know about Mark Callaway and the way he was backstage?
Well, he's not a guy that said a lot of things that he didn't mean. He wouldn't volunteer anything as far as advice unless he thought a guy, number one, wanted it, number two, deserved it, and three, was going to do something with it. For a guy like The Undertaker to pull you aside for a young kid and go, hey, you might want to change this, you might want to move that here, you might want to take that out. That kind of advice is invaluable. You can't buy it. Nobody at a training school can give that to you. That's advice that comes from years and years and years of perfecting a character that is not necessarily Mark Callaway.
Yeah.
The Undertaker walks down the hall, people scatter. Mark Callaway's sitting in his locker room getting dressed. He's approachable. And it's the gap between those two is really pretty wide, from who you get as a character coming through that curtain and who you talk to in the back. You know, he's just one of those guys that, you name it, he has no weaknesses. He's durable because, buddy, he beats his body up. A guy that size flying over the top rope, walking the top rope, all the things that he does to get his body battered, you know, the guy keeps coming back every year, and that's miraculous. I know how that is and how hard it is when you only wrestle a few times a year. It's your body just gets out of ring shape, and it's hard to go out and give a WrestleMania performance, and more times than not, he has really pulled it off.
Yeah, and the one thing everyone was saying, you know, if Undertaker is going to turn up and say his final farewell, everyone was speculating that someone, you know, naming a lot of names, was going to come in, ruin the celebration and set up one final match and all that kind of thing. For me, I think that's a lot of pressure to put on someone being the person that retires the Undertaker, and I'm glad they didn't do it. You know, you were backstage with him a lot, you know, throughout a lot of his career. Was there any names that ever came up of younger talents through the years that Undertaker was like, I would like that person to, you know, either break the streak or just someone that he would like to have put over in some way? Was there ever a young name that he's like, they're the person?
Well, you know, and I'm sure he did. A lot of guys, you know, the Kurt Angles and the Brock Lesnars and the guys that he did. My opinion, and I've said this from day one, at about the 10-year mark of The Undertaker, I started to see that streak was the biggest thing at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It was bigger than the world title. It was bigger than the Intercontinental title. It was bigger than any issue that they might have, any personal issue. It got bigger than life, and it became its own thing. And I said then, this guy deserves to walk away from the business with the streak intact.
Yeah. That
one match that year, he was unbeatable. I could get behind that. You could get behind that. And you would never have to beat the guy on that day. And I'm sure that was discussed in a lot of closed door meetings, you know, and trust me, the night that it went down, I had already went up to where the talent viewing area was, and the guys had their families and were having a few drinks, and that thing went down when the streak was broken, and everybody looked at me like they wanted to kill me. Now, this is a backstage inside story. I mean, like Miz and Heath Slater and all these guys are looking at me like, I didn't do it. What are you mad at me about? But they really, it was like, boom, what the hell was that all about? And it didn't matter who the opponent was. It shouldn't have been anybody. I think a lot of talent feel that way. But, you know, and really, do you think Brock Lesnar needed that shot in the ass? I don't. He's Brock Lesnar, for God's sakes. So, I mean, that's my opinion on Taker. He was just such a positive influence on the industry the last 30 years. I think he deserved that.
Yeah, and for me, we're sticking with WrestleMania for the last kind of Undertaker-related question, because you mentioned being up in the family area then. A few years before that, you were in the ring, delivering a spinebuster during a certain Undertaker match with Ric Flair. For me, you know, that's one of my favourite Arn Anderson memories, because anything that, you know, my age, anything that I was watching when I was younger, I was very young, or when I was getting older, I was watching things in the past. But that moment for me, that spinebuster, I was like, wow, what are your memories from that?
Well, people ask me what is my favorite spinebuster of all time. I don't think there's one that's in second place. Yeah. That was, how old would you have been then? Do you recall?
Oh, I don't even remember. It was WrestleMania 18, I believe. It was WrestleMania 18, I think.
So you were a baby, right?
So, yeah. No, I was 12 years old. 12 years old. So that's
I call that a baby. So you were 100% Undertaker fan, right?
Yes. Yes.
I think, yeah, and you tell me, put yourself in a 12-year-old mind. I've asked a lot of people. I think the key was I got down there without being seen.
Yeah.
So it was like I just magically appeared. Poof, I was there. And the setup was so good, and all the pieces of the puzzle were so good. Referees down. The spine buster looked pretty convincing, I think. When I rolled out and hit the floor, everybody in that building thought, oh God, they're going to pull this off.
Yeah.
It was actually set up well enough that that's it. That's going to be it. And when he kicked out, it was almost like a gasp and a sigh of relief. But that's the thing that was so special about it. It was done in a way that the audience believed, oh God, here it comes. Your feelings? Did you think that was it?
Yes, I remember feeling that was it at that exact point. And that was, you know, being 12 years old. Obviously, I knew about Ric Flair. I knew about Arn Anderson. But that was the moment that I think I remember going, man, I need to go back and I need to go back and check out some of these guys, you know, stuff from when I was too young. And then, of course, from there, I've obviously seen a lot of Ric Flair and a lot of Arn Anderson since. So that was one of those moments that I think when anyone mentions Arn Anderson, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Obviously, there's a few other things which we'll get to as well. But I want to talk a little bit about the podcast that you're doing first, because, you know, if anyone's got this far into watching this particular interview, then they obviously want to hear what Arn Anderson has to say. And on the Arn Show, which is part of ad-free shows, which I absolutely love, you are talking about all things wrestling. A lot of wrestlers and a lot of legends in wrestling have podcasts nowadays. My favourite thing is when it's someone like yourself, you've lived the business, you know, you've been in wrestling a long time. Why did you feel it was important to have a podcast, and what made you want to start doing it in the first place?
Well, I come from an era where bad guys were bad guys, good guys were good guys. I wasn't available for these type interviews by design.
Yeah.
Because you got to be you. You know, I won't insult you and come on your show and be Arn Anderson 100% without letting you see Marty Lundy. And it took me a long time to figure out, because all these years, 38 years I've been in the business, I was never available for autograph sessions by design. I wasn't wanting to be liked. I didn't do shows, you know, radio. Back then it was radio shows, call-in radio. You know, I wanted to keep that unless I could protect Arn Anderson, the character, because I thought that's what the audience was paying to see. That's what they liked. You know, even that I was a real horse's ass a lot of times, that's what a lot of people liked. They like to see me go on an interview and cut a guy's head off, you know, verbally. That's what a lot of people appreciated. And so this podcast, when Conrad came to me, and it was just a couple of days after I was released from WWE, and he said, I got an idea for you. I got a platform for you. How would you feel about doing a podcast? And what I was prepared to do at that time, because I haven't done any of those either, was some of these Comic-Cons and personal appearances of that nature. Wanted to come to the UK. Fans are fantastic. And all these years, I've never had the opportunity to just say, hey, thank you for your support. You know, thanks for all the years of just being great fans. We've loved coming over and performing for you. I've never had the opportunity to do that. And I knew that this podcast would give me that opportunity. So it's a grading on the curve. I'm learning to not breathe in every other syllable, which is annoying when I go back and hear it. So, you know, it gave me a lot of opportunity just to say thank you to all the fans.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And that's the thing for me that I mentioned, when it's people who have lived in the business, there's so much to learn. There's years worth of stuff that you can put out there. So there's endless amounts of podcasts that people can listen to, which is great, and always learn. Of course, one of the things that, you know, will be something people always want to hear about is the Four Horsemen. You know, I don't know if there was ever a more legendary faction in wrestling. Obviously, some people might debate it, but I think it's very difficult to debate against the Four Horsemen being the greatest ever. It's something a lot of people have tried to replicate. You know, people always say, who will be the next Four Horsemen? Here's the Four Horsewomen. It's always something that people go back to. What are your thoughts on people always trying to replicate the Four Horsemen?
Well, the one thing I think that is lost on a lot of people, and you go back and you watch it, we had a formula. We would go on television, and 100% of the time, just about, let's say 99, it was a favorable outing for us. We would go thump somebody, we would roll to the interview desk, we'd pick up a mic, and we would become Ric Flair, Tully Blanchard, Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson, JJ. Those characters came to life. I think a lot of these factions these days, they don't realize that our sole purpose was to go on that TV, piss a lot of people off, go to the live events at night, and just get our ass handed to us.
Yeah.
That's what the people paid to see in those days, because we had a lot of heat with people. They wanted us to be shut up. Somebody shut these guys up. A lot of the other factions are there, and I understand this, to get themselves over. You know what I mean? Push themselves. And once they get to the live events at night, they're not that gung-ho about giving you the fans what they want, which is Four Horsemen getting their ass kicked for 30 minutes. And that's always going to be the difference, how unselfish that group of guys were. Didn't matter if it was Dusty, the Road Warriors, the Rock and Roll Express. One week we could be getting our ass handed to us by the Rock and Roll Express. The next week it was the Road Warriors. The next week it was Dusty and somebody. And it was all the same. Let the audience have what they want. And that's the key to our faction. That's the reason it is, lasted the test of time. I love to have a person your age come up to me and say, man, my grandmother hated your guts. The greatest compliment of all. So I think that's the secret to our success, unselfishness, knowing our job description, and going out and giving the paying customer what they want.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's, I think, one of the things for me. Obviously, people try to emulate that. And it's something that translates to the ring as well, because a lot of people use the spinebuster now. I think it's one of those moves that hasn't lost its effectiveness. You know, people always compare like DDTs, Jake the Snake doing the DDT. You knew it was over. Do you think people using the spinebuster a lot has cheapened your use of it in any way? Or do you think people always look at it and go, it's never going to be as good as an Arn Anderson spinebuster?
Well, I hate to toot my own horn. This looks like a perfect chance to toot. A lot of people do excellent spine busters today. A lot of people do variations. I've always looked at it as honoring the move and me to a degree. The funny thing is, since I've retired and I've only done a few scattered spine busters, everyone has been so generous. They went, now that's a spine buster. And it's almost, it returned, because I did make up the move. It is my move. I introduced it, came up with it. And back in those days, no one would have dreamed doing another guy's signature move. But now that I've retired, guys would ask me. And, out of respect, I said, sure, man, I'm done. Take it. I think the audience has been very generous in the fact that mine seems to have a little more impact, even when it doesn't have more impact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's the kind of thing for me where, whenever you hear or see a spinebuster, sometimes the commentary will say Arn Anderson. A lot of the time they will, but if not, I still automatically think Arn Anderson, and that speaks volumes for the legacy that you've left with the Spinebuster. I want to ask about a couple of names. Obviously, you mentioned that you've done a few Spinebusters in recent years. We've seen a couple in AEW, or at least in the format of AEW. So I want to ask about a couple of names in AEW. One of my favourite things that came up recently, I was on a media call where Cody Rhodes said the best thing about Arn Anderson being in AEW is that Arn Anderson isn't playing a coach in AEW. Arn Anderson is a coach, which means it's legitimate. You're Arn Anderson on screen, but you're Arn Anderson off screen in AEW as well. What do you see your role as in AEW? Are you kind of just there to help everyone along the way? Or is it a case of, I might have one more match in me like DDP did?
Oh, no. Trust me, you saw me sit down in this chair or walk across the room, you would not believe that. He's done. No, I tell you explicitly, again, in this same time frame of being released from WWE, I got a call from Cody. He said, I would like for you to come to TV. We got something good here. I'd like for you to see it. And just tell me what you think. And I have been explicitly from day one a guy that was brought in because when Cody first started with WWE, day one, I talked to Dusty and I said, I will keep an eye on him and I'll take care of him. Now, that did not mean, and nor did Dusty believe it meant, that he was going to get any special treatment. It meant I was going to get in his ass more so than anybody else because I feel like I owe his father. When I came to Crockett Promotions and started working with Dusty Rhodes, it elevated me about tenfold. I never forgot that. So I rode Cody and Ted DiBiase Jr. harder than anybody else. And I was very close to both of their dads and still am. And I felt like I owed them the respect as telling them when they stunk, and there was a few times they really stunk, and telling them a pat on the ass when they did a pretty good job. And then when they had that rare occasion as they were climbing the ranks where they had an outstanding performance, I told them that. I think he wanted that same honesty now that he's a top player, because it's easy to look on the outside in, but when you're on the inside looking out, sometimes you got to change a few things. Yeah. And that's what I'm there for. I'm not a coach. They have a group of incredible, coaches. I'm just there to advise Cody. Of course, now, if a young talent comes up to me specifically and says, would you watch my match tonight and tell me what you think? I'm honored to do that. But that's not my job. It's not a regular thing. I'm just getting to know that list of talent. A lot of those guys, I don't even know where they came from. A lot of talented guys, too. It's like they just suddenly appeared, but it meant they had been on the Indies and hadn't worked for a big company yet. So they were brand new, fresh talent. Yeah. I think the company is doing an incredible job. 1 year out, a 1 year startup. Wow. Something to be proud of, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. And there's another name or names that would be FTR.
Yeah, that was the exact next question I had to ask.
I will say, and I have said for probably a year and a half now, they're the best team in the world. And they've done their homework, and I'm so flattered and honored that they've said they patterned themselves after Tully and I. Well, I went on record to say as well, they're much better than Tully and I. They're just more athletic. They can do more things. They're just, bang, 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 bang. Their cardio is just incredible. And they work at a pace that's different from when Tully and I were a team. I would say this, and I tell those guys, and I think it pisses them off, there's always who would win between you guys. Well, if we leave it to the athletics, they're going to win. I just don't think they're as nasty as we were. And I think that would be the deciding factor. So when they see this, they're going to be pissed. But I feel like they are the best team in the world. And every team the next morning that has wrestled them are better for it.
Yeah, most definitely. And you already beat me to the FTR question because I had to ask about them next. So I'm going to ask you about one particular match instead. Man, that FTR Young Bucks match that we saw just a couple weeks ago, for me, the best thing about it is the storytelling because, oh man, that had an incredible story all the way throughout. And then even the end, there was, a flip from a team that notoriously hate flips. What did you think of that match overall? And what do you think of, the complete contrast between FTR and the Young Bucks?
Well, I loved it. And it's the part that's missing in the industry. We can't go backwards and take all the flip-flop and fly out of the business because it's already been industry and introduced to the industry. You guys have accepted it. You like it. We need to leave it in. But we also need to regulate that with what you said. And I'm so happy you said that, being an intelligent fan and knowing what you're looking at.
Thank you.
Storytelling. That's the part that sells tickets. And I told those guys, all of them, before they had their match, there's also, you only get to do this one time in your career. Firsts, you can only do a first match one time. And that match had never happened. And so you had years and a decade of building. I'd love to see this match with those guys, those four guys. And when you saw it, it paid dividends. And I think the key to it was both of them worked to each other's strengths, and the storytelling was incredible.
Yeah, most definitely. One other name that's in AEW that I want to ask you about, but not about their time in AEW, because I think that's been, pretty good and people can see what it is for what it is. Jake Roberts. He's a man who, obviously he's doing great work in AEW. He never won a championship while in WWE. How important do you think championships are? Do you think, he should have won it? And, there's a lot of names. It's not just Jake Roberts. A lot of names that haven't won championships. How do you look at it when people say, oh, well, it's annoying that person didn't win a championship? How important are they?
This is my opinion. You can put a championship on anybody. It doesn't make the man. The man makes the championship. Take your hottest guy that's the most over, and then you put the title on him. You don't put the title on him hoping he will get over and be looked at as a champion. That's my opinion. Jake was such a strong character. He had such a strong persona. He never needed to be champion. He just needed to be Jake the Snake. Another note, it was Jake and I were never in the ring together until the AEW angle.
Yeah.
I was so honored to be in the ring and, mixing barbs and promos together. Sitting across that table for me, was an honor and a privilege because he was so good. And when he talks, people listen. And all those years we were never together in the ring. So it was something special for me for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. That was actually why I asked that question, because I saw that little fact online and I was like, Arn Anderson and Jake Roberts have never been in the same ring. That is absolutely insane. But obviously, once I seen the fact, I couldn't remember a time that I could prove it wrong with because it was the first, which is absolutely amazing. So I've got two last questions I want to ask you. We're going to kind of bring one of them up to date, and it's got to be Cody Rhodes. We spoke about him earlier. I just want to ask your thoughts on Cody Rhodes right now as a performer and a businessman, everything he's doing at this moment in time.
Well, he's juggling quite a bit, as is his wife, and when you live in the same household, they got a lot of, face of the business that they have to take care of. And, Cody is in the best shape of his life. I think he's clear-headed. He is goal-oriented. He wants to be a leader of the company. I don't think Cody looks at himself as the face of the company, even though he is, because he has such a rapport with the fans. And I just think that the sky's the limit for this guy. And Tony Khan, you know, giving 100% support to all the talent in every way, from keeping us safe during this pandemic to letting a person be himself and have some control over his own destiny. And Cody has a lot of influence as far as his own character goes. And I think he's having fun. Everybody that works there is having fun. And we're just glad to still be operating and getting better each and every week.
Definitely. And my final question, Arn Anderson, you've been around wrestling for a long time. We mentioned, you know, the birth of the spinebuster. A lot of people are using it nowadays. Aside from Arn Anderson, who has the best spinebuster you've ever seen?
Wow. I don't think I can narrow it down to one, but I can give you a few.
Please.
I think Triple H has a good one.
Yeah.
I think Bobby Roode. I think Rhino.
Oh, yeah.
Rhino, very good. I don't know about the rest, but those come to mind, top of my head. They got good whip, you know, good elevation, all the things that you need. And again, I see them virtually every week. Somebody does one. So it's an honor. It's a privilege to me. I've got maybe two more that I'm going to spread out. Time will tell. We'll see.
I like that. Maybe two more, exactly two. Well, I can't wait to see when the next one comes, because then after that, I'll know you've got one left, and I'm sure they're both going to be very special. You mentioned an honour and a privilege. It's been an honour and a privilege for me to talk to you today, Arn. Absolutely brilliant for, you know, me to talk to someone that I've watched for so many years. And I'm sure everyone watching this will feel the same way. If they do, the one thing they can do is go over to patreon.com/ad-free shows and check out the Arn Show, where they can listen to a lot more of your thoughts and get a lot more of your reaction going forward. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Please tune in to the Arn Show and give me your feedback. Let me know what you want to talk about and how I can make it better. I'm wide open.
Thanks for watching the video. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up to our sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN means that when you go online, your data is 100% secure no matter what you do on the web. And if you maybe want to watch Canadian Netflix or American Hulu, ExpressVPN have servers in over 100 different countries. We have this amazing Black Friday deal available where you can get 49% off, and the deal is available all the way through to December 14th. All you need to do to sign up is go to itrwrestling.com/VPN.